So what I'm going to show you is a few of my top tips on how to make good use of the audio objects in your level, and the two different kinds of audio objects that we've got are the sound objects and the music objects. So the first thing I do, or the easiest thing I can do, is to slap down a music object. And these work in exactly the same way as any other decoration in the game, which means unlike this craft material here, a decoration needs to be stuck to something else. So that's why I'm putting this block down. So I've got something to stick the music object to. And then if we look in here, I've got a big selection of tracks. These ones at the top under the music section are just linear tracks, which are tracks that either we've licensed from the music industry, or I've written some, or there's another composer on the project, Daniel Pemberton, has written some. And then down here we've got the interactive music tracks. So you get a little preview in the track here, which lets you browse the tracks that you've collected. And you select it, and you can just pop it down. If I hold down X, it'll go straight to the tweak menu. And the things you can play with a plain vanilla music track are the volume. And so you can set it to a level you're happy with. And then the start point allows you to select whereabouts in this track that the music will begin when you actually trigger it. So I've put in some handy start points there in the D-pad, but you can actually just go anywhere in the track using the left stick there, find somewhere you like. That's a nice bit, we'll go with that. Okay, and then the trigger radius, represented here by the ring around the music object, is how close a SAC person needs to be to the music object to actually get it going. So it's coming at the start point I selected, at the volume that I set it at. And so that's the easiest way to get music in your game, in your level. Put it somewhere at the beginning and you can just leave it playing. When the level finishes, it'll go away. But just to make it a little bit more advanced, you can of course put down multiple music objects. So all of a sudden that opens up a few more possibilities. You can of course just take the same music object you had previously and maybe change the mix of it, make it quieter, make it louder to suit something that's happening in the game. Or you can of course change the music track. So if I go back to my list of tracks, I'm going to switch now to this track here. And it's a similar process. Slap it down, tweak it to make it have the settings you want. And now when I go back to the beginning of my level, first we'll get this Daniel Pemberton track, and then it'll switch to this Kinky track. And back again. And so what you can do is really change the music in your levels to fit the vibe of what's happening at different points. So for example, you start your level and there's nothing much going on, select an ambient track, and then you get into a race, bring in music that's higher intensity. You come out of the race, bring it back down again. And that's really the thinking behind the interactive music objects, which, as I said earlier, works slightly different to the plain vanilla music objects. Let me show you that now. So we've got 8 in here, one for each of the 8 themes that are in the full version of LittleBigPlanet. There's different tracks within each interactive music object. And so again, pop it down and tweak it. What you can see is each interactive music object has 6 sliders, and each slider's got a slightly different set of instruments on it. Quite often the first one you'll encounter is an ambient effects track, and that's really just a little bit of background fluff, which doesn't really do anything, it's not in your face. And then the individual stems add something different to the mix, so there's a bass in there. And then we've got a drum track in there, and of course we've got other things. Okay, so we'll start our level over here. I'll just tweak this to do what I want. Okay, so at the start, I'll just have it nice and ambient. Pop down the same music object, and if you pop down the same music object, it doesn't make the track stop or start. It just actually lets you tweak its settings. So select the same track, pop it down, tweak it, and then, so we had it like this before. I'm now going to bring in the drum during the race, and maybe a bit of bass as well. And then what I will do now, just to save a bit of time, is copy that music object, and it should have retained the settings from that one. Indeed, there they are. So that's a little time-saving tip. Just copy and paste the music object to retain its settings. And I'm going to take the drums out, a bit lower intensity after the race, but I'm going to reward the player with a bit more of the tune. Okay, so now if we test that, we should see the music changing. Nice and ambient at the start there. And then when our race starts and we get through the start point, switches to have the drums in there. And then we finish a race and the music changes again. So that's really the underlying principle of how to put music into your levels. So let me just show you one more thing, and that's the sound objects, which is the other audio object that allows you to customize your level. You've got 9 in here, and you, unlike a lot of the other objects in the game which you collect by playing through the media molecule levels, the sound objects, once you've played the tutorial for the sound objects, you will unlock them all, so you get them all up front. You don't have to hunt for them. They're divided up by category, and again, unlike any other object in the game, for example, the music has one icon per track. Sound objects have multiple sounds within each sound object. So I've selected the comedy sounds, slap it down, hold down X to go straight to the tweak menu, and then I've got a big list of sounds in here which you can preview. So, fart, amazing, pop, sneeze. Okay, we'll stick with this. So options in here, the modifier, the reason I've called it modifier is it doesn't always just change the pitch, sometimes it does other effects to it, but for the most part, 99% of the time it does actually just change the pitch. So get to a pitch that you're happy with. Similar to the music object, you can make it visible or invisible in play mode. And then these are the different ways that you can trigger it. So the first one, player proximity, is identical to the music objects. You run past it and it just plays. On destruction, that one's specifically for use on materials which will disappear. So for example, the dissolving material, or you can have your little creature pieces which make little artificial intelligent life forms. If you have a sound object on that, and then you destroy the creature, this is essentially a way to have a death sound effect. By switch, this is the one that offers perhaps the most flexibility. You can connect any of the switches up in LittleBigPlanet to your sound object, and indeed your music object, and trigger them by some logic mechanism that you've set up. So for example, maybe a trapdoor opens, and when the trapdoor opens you want to play the sound of creaking wood to represent the trapdoor opening. You can do that all with switches. But perhaps the most simple, other than the player proximity, is on impact. If I set that to this, when I close pop it and the object becomes real, it will fall on the ground and should play our xylophone sound. Something I've put into the game is one of the sound objects is specifically musical sounds. And so I've given people a selection of sounds that they can use. So to start with, we've got drum sounds, you've got kick and snare, and electronic drums, we've got bass guitar, basic piano samples, electric piano, and then if anyone wants to go mad, there's a sine wave loop. And you may have seen me earlier using grid mode, which the hardest thing about making music using this method is having some kind of accuracy in terms of your timing. So you can essentially use grid mode as a quantizer. So if I make little blocks, and there's a sound object in each of them, because they're all uniform in size, when you drive past those and you've got switches to trigger them, you've got a reliable meter which you can use to make music, which sounds pretty good, considering it's not a music sequencer, it's just a piece of entertainment. But because of the flexibility of the tools, you can build a tracker, a music sequencer, to write music essentially.
LittleBigPlanet.